And this is why you won't be able to recognize a level 2 species as a comprehensible life form unless it chose to let you. Johnny met God the other day. And I know what you're thinking. How the heck did he know it was God? It all started with Johnny going to visit his grandma. He was sitting in a train, looking at the sky, when a guy walks out to him. He was about 30, wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt. A casual look, one might say. Decently normal for a programmer. "Is this spot taken?" he said. No, please sit," Johnny replied. A few minutes go by, and this person sitting next to Johnny suddenly said something again. "Can I ask you a question?" he said. Our hero put on a mask and replied yes in a tone which was actually intended to send a message that he can take one question, but he is not in the mood for an actual conversation. "Why don't you believe in God?" the stranger said. Fighting to restrain his eyebrow again, Johnny was taken by surprise. I mean, how was this guy so confident and correct about Johnny's atheism? Because he was indeed correct. "Why do you say I don't? I mean, what makes you so certain I don't?" Johnny replied. "Because I am God, and you are not actually afraid of me." Johnny's face changed up a little, thinking surely that this person has mental problems, and then thought that this conversation might be entertaining after all. "But why should I believe that?" our hero replied. "Well, you can actually ask me a few questions, anything you want. Then you can decide if my answers can satisfy your doubtful mind." "Game on," Johnny said. "Who am I?" Johnny Clark, born June 10, 1966, Los Angeles. Your father Mark and your mother Clarence sent you to University of California. You fell in love with a girl named Emma. You met her during the winter holidays. You then wanted to be an author, but you were not disciplined enough to fulfill that career path. That is because you are an aspiring philosopher as well. And we all fell into that rabbit hole before, haven't we? It can be hard to get out. Then you married Emma, convinced by society that marriage is the right thing to do. But you were not truly convinced, weren't you? You have 2 kids, young Billy and Teresa, and you are now a programmer writing stories in code. And you are actually coming back from a job interview for a software company named VNow. And you were a bit of a show-off today, I might say. And I think that the poor girl at HR will not probably hire you. The stranger paused. "I see that you are not convinced yet," he said. "Well, of course not. This type of knowledge about me could be easily achieved through hardcore stalking. I can see that you are comfortable enough with this, and I am then going a little bit further and will ask you if you allow me to state your most secret password and the associated question." Johnny thought that a skilled hacker might be able to obtain the password, but knowing the secret question that was linked to the password was something impossible to achieve. But the stranger did know his computer password, and the associated question as well. Johnny got scared but persistent too, as he threw in more specific questions related to his childhood, like the moment when he fell from a tree and lied to his mother, or when he stole candy from his grandma's jar. But the stranger had the answers to all of those questions. Our hero swiftly did some mental calculations, and he was convinced that there were only 3 possible explanations at this point. The first explanation was that he was dreaming, or possibly hallucinating, feeling sick. But he was feeling like he was in a sort of a play, acting his own lines. The other explanation he thought about was that this stranger was indeed a true telepath. Then he thought that there is no documented evidence of anyone having such a profound range of abilities, but it was indeed a possibility. When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. He fell into the rabbit hole and was a bit forced to accept at least the possibility that this man was who he claimed to be. And what now? At one point, Johnny imagined a situation where he would meet God and said to himself that he would have a ton of questions to ask. And now, as he was in this situation, why the heck not? And he tried to get a better grip of his internal monologue and said to himself, again, "This is your moment, make the best out of it. You must not waste this opportunity." "You won't," the stranger said. The reply made Johnny stop again and reevaluate his reality. But something about the stranger made him have confidence in his perception. The fact of his words suddenly made him feel truly reassured and relaxed. "Are you human?" our hero asked. "No," the stranger replied. "I'm actually a product of evolution, mainly my own evolution." And you evolved from a species like our species, a DNA-based organism, or something equally viable? That is correct, the stranger replied. And what exactly makes you God? I did, he said confidently. And the powers you have are in a way similar to what the superstitious humans attribute to you? And are you the one who created all of this, just for us, the universe? Close enough. I have created this universe, and my powers are linked to your imagination. I'm a natural phenomenon, and humans will probably understand this one day, as you are exploring the mechanics of nature. How many species are there already, and are they ahead of us? Well, my current database says that there are less than 14 million, and they are more advanced than you, indeed. And how many are currently at our level? Currently, there are over 7.5 billion species that are somehow at your level. Johnny was shocked. He learned that the significance of the human race in the universe was almost equivalent to the significance of the average Joe walking on the planet in his relation to the human race. I can see that you're a little bit confused, the stranger replied. Let me expand. You can consider what I say as outlining the levels of evolution, although I do not like this terminology. But let's oversimplify it, shall we? There's level 1, obviously, the level your species has reached. This begins with the invention of the flying machine. But the next level is achieved when a species is no longer dependent, like you and your son. Thus they will be able to prosper away by their own, flying to a different solar system, being independent. As humanity is only just into the flying machine stage, you can probably understand that it will take a little bit of time and knowledge to get there. And do you mean that we will be able to control our sun one day? Quite the opposite, the stranger said. You think that bigger machines are better and stronger, and that you will always need more energy and resources to achieve what you call mastery of the universe. But you are on the right path. Do you remember those giant computers you used to have? Sending the man on the moon and all that? You somehow managed to make them smaller, to fit in your pocket. But most of you humans are still using them to gossip, playing random games, out of boredom and laziness or lack of purpose. And the truth is that the more advanced we become, the less energy we require, and the less impact we have on our environment. Because when you can manipulate matter, that requires a giant amount of energy, but manipulating energy requires none. And this is why you won't be able to recognize a level 2 species as a comprehensible life form, unless it chose to let you. That is quite a lot to take in, Johnny said. But I have one more question. Do you have any desires? My personal motivation is related to optimizing the intelligence of the universe. In more simplistic terms, I strive to minimize pain and optimize pleasure. But it's not about the word pleasure per se. It's more about achieving a state of optimal flow, like you do from time to time when you're coding. The flow state also arises from communication between separate entities, like you communicating with your machines. Once you've achieved my level, we tend to stop being billions of separate entities and become one, advanced and self-contained. But I must say that one of the pleasures we lose along the way is that simple joy of meeting new and unpredictable minds. Thus, in large part, the point of this exercise is to provide company. Johnny was catatonic, but still managed to get the next question out. What are your thoughts around the Big Bang? Johnny said. The first significant level of the intelligent self-organization of matter is the arrival of the organic chemistry, which forms the precursor for biology and the first primitive life forms. That chemistry evolved mostly in deep space, once the stars had created enough of the heavier elements, and purely as a result of the operations of the laws of physics and chemistry, which your scientists have already largely understood. And all I did was to set the initial conditions, which triggered the Big Bang, and essentially became dormant for nearly 5 billion years. That's how long it took the first life forms to emerge. The first intelligent species are now 4.3 billion years ahead of you, really quite advanced. I can have deeply meaningful conversation with them, and usually do. In fact, I am as we speak. Let's say I maintain an awareness of what's going on at a planetary level. I tend only to focus on evolutionary leaps, see if they are going in the right direction. And what will you do if they are not? Nothing, he replied. Usually, species evolving in the wrong direction kill themselves off or become extinct for other reasons. There have been 1 or 2 cases where a wrong species has had the potential of becoming dominant at the expense of more promising strain. But at that stage, how could you know that a better prospect would arise from the ashes? I don't, but the probability is quite high. I set an alarm for the first sign of artificial aerial activity, as I usually do. Leonardo looked promising for a while, but not until the Montgolfier brothers did I really begin to take an interest that basically registered you as a level 1 intelligent species. And while you were not looking at the birds, they can fly as well. Intelligent flyers rarely become technologists. They tend to evolve into adapters rather than manipulators. But the few exceptions develop flying machines rather more quickly than species like your own, because they have a natural understanding of aerodynamics. Okay, so what about our most famous prophets, like Jesus, Moses, Muhammad? Sadly misguided, I'm afraid. I'm not here to act as a safety net or ethical dictator for evolving species. Is it true that anyone capable of communicating with your own cells will dimly perceive a connection to me and all other objects in this universe through the quantum foam? And their followers are all a bit of too obsessive and religious for my liking. It's not fun being worshipped once you stop being an adolescent. Having said that, it's not all unusual for developing species to go through that phase until they begin to grasp how much they too can shape their small corner of the universe. Eventually, if they are to have any hope of attaining level 2, they must grow out of it and begin to accept their own power and potential. Respect is not so bad as long as it is not overdone. Johnny raised a question again. But why, if you have the power that goes with being a god, have you sat back and allowed us to endure such incredible suffering and human misery in the past few centuries? You need an arms race in order to make progress, the stranger said. Your desire to dominate fuels the search for knowledge, which the adapters never acquire. And although your initial desire for knowledge is selfish and destructive, it begins the development of an intellectual self-awareness, a form of higher consciousness, which never emerges in any other species. Militarization and the development of weapons of mass destruction, first serious test at level 1. You are still not through that phase, though the signs are promising. There is no point whatsoever in my intervening to prevent your self-destruction. Your ability to survive these urges is a crucial test of your fitness to survive later stages. So I would not, never have, and never will intervene to prevent a species from destroying itself. You've already passed a major trap in learning to live with nuclear weapons. It's depressing how many fail at that stage. But how about those who have to live through this torment and suffering? I cannot say this in a way that doesn't sound blunt, but how much time do you spend worrying about the ants you run over with your car? You have to see the bigger picture. At this stage in human development, you are becoming interesting but not yet important. Species who hold on to religion tend to be most likely to self-destruct. They spend so much energy arguing about my true nature and invest so much emotion in their wild imagery that they end up killing each other over differences in definitions of something they clearly haven't got a clue about. Johnny was shocked. Why me though? He finally asked. Because you can accept my existence without your ego caving in and groveling like a naughty child, the stranger replied. Conversely, your interest is pure academic. As far as I can see, you have never swallowed the fairy tale, but you've remained open to the possibility of a more advanced life form which could acquire godlike powers. You have shown you can and do cope with the concept. It seemed reasonable to confirm your suspicions and let you do what you will with that information. But why now? Johnny replied. Well, partly because both you and the web are ready now, but chiefly because the human race is reaching a critical phase. It goes back to what we were saying about the dangers of knowledge. Essentially, your species is becoming aware of that danger. When that happens to any sapient species, the future can take 3 courses. Many are tempted to avoid the danger by avoiding the knowledge. Like the adapters, they are doomed to extinction, often pleasantly enough in the confines of their own planet, until either their will to live expires or their primary turns into a red giant and snuffs them out. The only ones who reach level 2 are those who learn to accept and to live with their most dangerous knowledge. Each and every individual in such a species must eventually become capable of destroying their entire species at any time. Yet, they must learn to control themselves to the degree that they can survive even such deadly insight. They are the only ones we really want to see leaving their solar system. Species that haven't achieved that maturity could not be allowed to infect the rest of the universe. But fortunately, that has never required my intervention. The knowledge always does the trick. You will shortly be able to conquer biological diseases and even engineer your cells to be virtually fault-free. Your biological lifespans will double and triple within the next 100 years, and your digital lifespans will become potentially infinite within the same period if you survive the potential threat that the same technology provides in the form of genetic time bombs or custom-built viruses and the other wonders of genetic and digital warfare. You simply can't have the benefits without taking the risks.